What do you do when your back is against the wall? I've been thinking about some of the stories in the Bible of people who had their backs against the wall. I think about Elijah, who was called to tear down the Baal worship, and Jezebel decided that she was going to kill him. So he fled and ended up beside a brook called the Brook of Cherith. And he stayed there, and ravens fed him. And then the brook dried up. And so he had to move. And so God said, now I want you to go, and I want you to meet a widow who is on her last meal. Now, the widow is ready to prepare her last meal and to die. And strangely, God tells Elijah to tell the woman, now I want you to prepare a meal, and I want you to give half of it to me and half to your son. And so he does. And so it says sometime later the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath, and when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called and said, bring me, please, a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar. So she's on her last meal, and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. Now that's a woman whose back is against the wall. But Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and son. Now, can you imagine telling a woman that desperate to make a meal for yourself? For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day of the Lord sends rain on the land. She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family, for the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken to Elijah. And sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. She said to Elijah, what do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son? Give me your son, Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, Lord my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow I'm staying with by causing her son to die? Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried out to the Lord, Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him. And it did. You know, so often God brings us to the Red Sea, where Moses had no place to go but the dead end of the Red Sea. But God, then God opened the Red Sea. And whenever God places us in a situation that's a problem that's bigger than ourselves, be aware that that may be the time God's going to create a miracle. And recently, I just released a new book, God's Promises Start with a Problem. And in this book, I talk about the biblical stories of people who had their backs against the wall, and also modern day men and women in the marketplace who had their backs against the wall. And so I want to encourage you to get this book and also consider going through my 8-part course based on the book. You can find that at godspromisesstartwithaproblem.com. And I'd love to hear what you think of it. God bless. Take care.